Hi, welcome to Mountain Crypto. I'm your host Shane Ripley. Today we're going to talk about simple blockchain explanation. Now my disclaimer is this isn't a technical explanation of the blockchain or how it works or the ledger and how it works, but basically just to help the average person wrap their mind around it and get the basic skill or understanding of confidence that's built behind the different cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, and the ledger, which are terms you should eventually be becoming familiar with if you are looking to get interested in cryptocurrency. So that's my disclaimer. Please hit our subscribe button, like the video, check out our social links. They're on the description down below. I'll include those. So with that, let's get right into it. First of all, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are not the blockchain. They are what they are. The blockchain is basically a way of creating a ledger of the accounts, how money moves. So if you back up for a minute and you think about a transaction, if I have a candy bar and I hand it to you, we just made the most basic form of transaction, right? If you have, a flower, I guess, or something, and you give me the flower for the candy bar, we change, and we've just made a transaction. So that's how things have been from the beginning of time, basic transactions. And then at some point, somebody put a value on something. We did a thing on currencies and on money, and you're familiar most likely with our currency here in the US. It has the value that the government puts on it. But if people lose faith in that or they lose trust in it, then the value diminishes or goes away. And that's what happens to countries where their money, you have $1 million bills in Turkey and different countries, and then a government changes and the money is, people don't even want to, it's cheaper than wallpaper, right? So the thing about cryptocurrency and blockchain, why does it work? It's an electronic form of trust. If I send you an email or I draw a copy and I say this is $1, and I write it on a piece of paper, you can take it and you can copy it. If I send you an email and I say this email is worth $1, you can copy it. So there's no trust. There's no trust behind it. There's nothing to verify it. So that's where the blockchain and the ledger come into play. So let's go into a very basic explanation of how that might work, not in a literal sense, but in the sense where someone who has no understanding of the blockchain would be able to get a grip on it. So the blockchain is basically going to be to make a transaction, to move digital money, right? So let's just start off with a real basic diagram here. We'll say Adam and Bob and Cindy, and we'll just say Deb, are all in this transaction that we're going to talk about. Now Adam, he has $20 in this crypto world. That's how much he has total. And he wants to send $10 to Bob. So there's $10 goes to Bob. He also wants to send $5 to Debbie. And let's say he wants to send $5 to Cindy. Okay? So when he does that, this money being sent actually creates somewhat of a chain, right? And each one of those transactions would be under Adam. So Adam has $20. He sends, so Adam sends $10 to Bob. Adam sends, and that should be 10, $5 to Debbie, or Deb. And then Adam sends $5 to Cindy. So now he has no money, basically. Okay? And this is recorded that he does this. That's his chain of how the money is moved. Now, on the other hand, let's see, let me go with blue. If Debbie, who now has $5, that's not going to work. Let me get a different color. Pins. Debbie wants to send $10 to, let's say, Cindy. It isn't going to work because Debbie only has $5. So it can't be validated. So therefore, that one is refused. Okay? So in the most basic forms, that's how a blockchain is more or less going to work. And also, let's see. So the problem that we're looking at, that we're solving, is Mike wants to send this money to, let's say Bob, and he's in Japan. So, and somebody else is in another part of the country. So that is part of the problem. The other problem is, let's say he tried to do this without the blockchain. Then he would have to get in a third party. So there'd be a third party that would do the wire transfer to get the money to Bob. And now, so that's it. The transfer is problem number one. And then the second problem that the blockchain would help solve is the expense. So the expense to transfer that money to Bob in Japan would be very expensive, probably $30 or more, right? Western Union, electric transfers, bank transfers, wire transfers, all these things are the quickest way. And the time that it takes typically can take several days for a transfer to complete its process and be verified through traditional means. Okay, so the blockchain is going to help solve all those things. Also, another thing is trust. Because Adam has to trust whoever's transferring the money to Bob in Japan, there's an element of trust that needs to be taken care of. And the blockchain really helps with the ledger, helps take care of all those things. Now the wire transfer is centralized. The bank has the encryption. The bank has all their keys and codes. They have it. Someone in the bank could take that money because we're human. It happens, right? People in funds and banks and other entities that handle money, occasionally money gets embezzled and it's taken away. So the blockchain helps solve all those things, and we will go through that a little bit. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything here. All right, so let's go ahead and look at how a block might work in a little different way. The blockchain is basically a ledger. Everybody knows what a ledger is. You could have a ledger on your bank account. You put so much money in, you take so much money out. It shows, you write down who you sent it to, you write down the check number, you have your bank account. So your ledger is there. The bank sends you a statement. It's kind of like a ledger. Even if real estate transaction takes place, it's on a ledger. Everything is on a ledger. Medical records, all sorts of things are on a ledger. The records of vehicles. So the blockchain, keep in the back of your mind, is useful for almost every single business that is out there because of the ledger. So let's just take a real oversimplified look at how a ledger might look if we were to try to put it in its simplest terms. So we'll take Adam, and he's going to have a wallet. His wallet gives him an identification. And by the way, there's different wallet for each coin because they all run on their own platform or network or node or blockchain. Okay? So he has this wallet and it's got his address. Okay? And it is a alphanumeric code, pretty long. This address is public. Anybody can see this address when he uses it by looking at the ledger. He also has a private address. Nobody can see what that is. Only Adam knows. You never want to give that information to anybody. You never want to post it on the internet. He has a private address. And then he has a certain amount of crypto tokens, Bitcoin, what have you, in there. So when he wants to send something, he puts in the amount, he has his address on there, and then, two, he may want to send this money to Bob or whoever. So, two. Now, in order to send that money to Bob, he's going to need Bob's public address. Not Bob's private address, Bob's public address, okay? Now, once he sends that into motion, then what happens is this transaction needs to be verified. And that's what the miners do. The miners are strong computers that are computing and figuring out how to line all these transactions up on the blockchain. Now, oversimplification, the way they do that is they match up these addresses, they verify Adam's sending $10. Is there really $10 in there? Is the address, will it be able to get to Bob? And then it also figures out a key. Once it figures it out, now there's miners all over the world for Bitcoin, thousands of them. They're all competing. Who can line this up first and figure out the key? It's cryptographic. It's complicated. I don't fully understand it myself. But the important point is we're just trying to get a basic understanding of how it works, why it works, how it's beneficial, the problems it solves, and therefore build a foundation that this is something that is going to be here and it's going to change the world as we know it. Once all of this has happened, and let's say this miner figures it out, figures out the key, he's got it all lined up. Now what happens is this miner sends out that information to the different other computers that are running out there for a consensus. A consensus. It must have a consensus that they all say, yes, that's right, that's correct. They all have a copy of the blockchain. Once a consensus is reached, then it is validated. It's time-stamped, and the block is complete. That's a block. The explanation, very rudimentary. Now the next time someone makes a transaction, that can be built off of this block. Same thing. Address, to, from, time, validation, consensus, consensus validation, next block. And then the next. And there you see a real rudimentary diagram of how a blockchain is formed. Now, why is it so good? Again, those problems that it solves. Because it is not centralized, it's decentralized. This is called an open ledger. All these miners can go into the block and look and verify. You can go look at the blockchain and see all the data and all the transactions that are taking place. You're not going to see the private keys or anything like that, but you can look that up. That's how come sometimes people will see a large amount of money moved and they'll kind of trace it to a particular wallet and see that transactions are taking place. Now, you don't know who it came from, but because there's a privacy built into that, because nobody knows. But you can see the transactions. So with that being done, if you try to change this or copy this, it won't work because it has a key. So you cannot copy this block. This is a very secure block. Bitcoin has been very secure. Coins have been taken off exchanges. People have given up their private codes and lost money. There's been people ripped off, but not by getting in and doing that. The only way, and actually it has happened, not to Bitcoin, the only way it can happen is what they call a 51% attack. So if 51% of all the miners out there, the computers that are checking the ledger and verifying the ledger and unlocking the key, figuring out the key through very complicated mathematical cryptographics, it's safe, very safe. So the security and the trust are built in. And that's why this is actually something that will be used for medical records, insurance, property, any kind of ledger or accounting that you have. I've heard it described that in the future you could have a piece of fruit and you could scan that piece of fruit with something like the Square QR code and know everything about that fruit because it would all be on the ledger. The entire history of all these transactions is on the ledger. Okay? You could look at that piece of fruit and find out when it was picked, when the plant was, what kind of fertilizer was bought and purchased. Theoretically, you could know everything you could ever possibly want to know about a product or a service or money or exchanges or information. Any of those things are very viable for the blockchain. So it's coming. It will be here. It's awesome technology. Let me take a look and see if I'm forgetting anything here. So we talked about the open ledger. We talked about, again, if a transaction is tried to be made that is invalid, the address is wrong, or there's not enough money, then, or it's a fake, okay, there won't be the key. The key won't be able to be unlocked because they don't know what it is. So there's the trust. It's very fast. These transactions can take place in seconds, okay? And they're getting faster all the time because of developments to do side chains and other things besides the basic blockchain are being done. One other term that I didn't throw out there is proof of work, POW. So this is like Bitcoin and Litecoin. It is a proof of work system where these miners have to show the proof of work, the proof that they put this all together and they had the key. They were the first to do it. They had a consensus from the other miners. If the only way you could copy that would be to have 51% attack, where 51% of these computers were all in the same plot to copy, to make copies of this, because they could theoretically validate a false block. Okay? And that has not happened with Bitcoin. Some of the smaller cryptocurrencies that are out there that have low volume, where it might only take a few $1,000s or a few hundred miners to do a 51% attack, are vulnerable. Be careful what coins you invest in if you're investing. And I don't give investment advice. I'm not an advisor. I don't give advice of any kind, but be careful of what coins you're investing in, especially if you're just new to the blockchain, the ledger, Bitcoin, and cryptocurrencies. Let's see if we forgot anything else here. So we looked at all those things. I think we're pretty good. I will expand on this. This is a presentation that I've been practicing and building. It's built upon several different ways of describing the blockchain and the ledger that I have learned from and listened to, and I've kind of combined them to match what helped me understand it, and help me understand that there's a level of trust here, that it's secure, and reasonably secure, and in fact in some cases might be more secure than other things that we have available, faster and definitely cheaper. Now, some of the coins you may say, well, you know, Bitcoin has a huge fee and this, that, and the other, but other altcoins are much cheaper, and like the Litecoin is much cheaper, and they're all working on ways of doing it cheaper. And even if you paid a few dollars to transfer Bitcoin, or a percent or two, it's typically a lot cheaper than, say, a wire transfer. They can be $30, $40 for that. So I think I'm pretty accurate on my facts here. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, what have you. Check out our links. And with that, this is your host, Shane Ripley with Mountain Crypto. Over and out.